So in this one, we're going to be going over Dewitte and his Pepperball pistol because ever since the last video I posted exploded. By the way, thank you guys. I got over 50 something subscribers now and over 4,000 views on my analytics uh, for that video. So, I'm going to be giving you some details on what exactly it is that Jeremy carries in his holster. And we're going to go over in detail how that led to him getting arrested for felon in possession. Okay? So, this is the company right here, Umarex. And they make air guns for airsoft, BB pellet guns, and paintball. They are the manufacturers of this right here. This is the Umarex T4E TPM1 43 caliber training pistol paintball gun marker. This is the exact one that Jeremy carries. Now, let me introduce you to the gun that it was designed after, but because, unlike some of their other paintball marker guns in 43 caliber, they did not have the licensings right at that time from this company. This is the Glock 17 full-sized handgun in 9mm. This is what the T4E TPM1 was designed after. And here is the Umarex T4E TPM1 in a holster. This is the Glock 17 in a holster. Driving down the interstate, doing 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, just a glance at this out the window at someone carrying this on their hip, you won't be able to tell the difference from this or this. There's key details, small minute details that you'd have to look for. So for instance, there's a reason why I have both for the guns unholstered facing the same direction. Okay, this is slightly larger than this. This is slightly, I mean very slightly larger than this one. This one's a little longer, the other one's a little wider. And then the Glock has this little button right here. Now what this does is when you have the magazine out of the Glock and dropped, and you've racked it back and locked the slide in place, you pull down on this and pull the trigger with the slide released, and the slide comes off the Glock. This doesn't need a slide release because this doesn't need parts lubricated as often as you would with a Glock handgun. This doesn't have powder being burnt off through the chamber and the barrel that's going to cause corrosives to start rusting parts. This is pressurized air, CO2, and it's not burning. But they have the same trigger. They have a rail under the barrel, As a matter of fact, in Jeremy's recent video that he just released just a little while ago, Jeremy actually has a weapon light mounted on his. It's in a Safariland SLS Glock holster that is designed for law enforcement officers to carry, and his holster specifically has the extra space on it so he could have a weapon light mounted on his Umarex T4E TPM1. And because this gun is designed after the Glock 17, it will fit any Glock 17 holster that will go on a duty belt or that an everyday person would have. Now, since then, Umarex no longer carries the T4E TPM1. These are the only T4E weapons that they carry. And see, these they do have license for. This is a Walther PPQ. And even when they were making, I'll go ahead and get rid of the Glock pictures now. Even when they were making the TPM1, you could only get it in two colors. All black like you see here. Let me scroll down and see if they got an option. Oh, they do. And then this was your other color option for it. Black with a blue slide. And because these are CO2 powered, because these are the slides are not permanently mounted to the frame, you can take these apart. They just don't have the same process of taking the slide off of the lower frame like a Glock does. But because of that, it's CO2 powered. This slide is what we call a blowback. In airsoft, in paintball, the slide, every time you pull the trigger, racks back and slides back forwards, just like a real handgun would. Why did Sergeant Vidler say don't reach for your firearm? Don't reach for your firearm. That is why he said don't reach for your firearm. And for those of you saying Vidler knew that it was a firearm, well, look, he knows that Jeremy carries Pepperball. Now notice this says it's a paintball gun, right? After these came out for their original purpose, which was for training and for paintball, what happened is someone came along and designed a .43 caliber paintball round that instead of filling it with the paint marking liquid, they filled it with powderized form of pepper spray. Now, you can get two different types of magazines for these. I should point that out also real quick. This is the standard magazine that comes with it. But you can get this magazine right here. This would make it easily identifiable as not a real firearm. This one, this bottom base plate on the magazine slides forwards. There's a little hex key hole on the bottom. You stick a Allen wrench in there, loosen it up, and this notch right here would be filled by a CO2 cylinder, a 12-gram CO2 cylinder. And then you simply take your Allen wrench, Allen key, hex key, and just literally tighten it down really quickly so that it tightens up and punctures the CO2 cartridge and charges the system. Then you would load the .43 caliber rounds in here. This one is a little different. This is if I was going to carry this for self-defense, specifically for carrying pepper balls in it, this is the magazine I would have. Why? Because this one I have to use a hex key or an Allen key to already puncture the CO2 cartridge while it's in there and risk losing pressure over time. With this, you just turn this little knob right here on the bottom of the magazine down. Then you, again, put your 12-gram CO2 cartridge in here. Tighten that knob back up nice and snug. But it doesn't puncture the CO2 cartridge. So you can keep a CO2 cartridge in this without having it punctured, worrying about losing pressure, losing CO2, until you're ready to fire it. And in that case, you simply just tap this knob from the bottom really hard, like that. It punctures the CO2, charges the system. You've already got your rounds in there. You're ready to rock and roll. This magazine right here, had it been in what Jeremy was carrying, it probably would have prevented him from getting pulled over. And going back to my topic about Jeremy getting pulled over for carrying this the way he did, you can never assume, just because you know a person's a felon and you know that they use that in the past, when you have stopped them and talked to them, they were carrying a paintball gun with pepperball rounds in it. For officer safety, you can never assume that when you see the weapon configured in a different configuration, excuse me, in a different way, with a different type of magazine, because Jeremy actually has that second type of magazine right there. I've seen it in his video when he goes through what's in his rook bag, as he calls it. But you can never assume in any situation that the same person is still carrying a non or less than lethal paintball gun with pepperball rounds in it, and it's looking like an actual firearm. Everybody, I'm sure, has heard the saying, never assume. It makes an ass out of you and me. If Vidler was to get too comfortable, and I'm not saying that this would happen, I'm going to go ahead and put a disclaimer in here. I'm not saying that Jeremy is like this whatsoever. I'm not. But hypothetical, Jeremy's actually carrying instead of carrying this in a hypothetical situation. Vidler assumes it's a paintball gun with pepperball rounds in it, instead of double checking and making sure and verifying that, and then ticks Jeremy off to the point, hypothetically, and then they get into a firefight. It's best to err on the side of caution when you're working in law enforcement like Vidler is in dealing with Jeremy, because you never know. You never know when you come across someone that you've come across in the past, whether they have, how much they have changed, if they're really still doing what they're saying that they've been doing all along. You never know. Always have a heightened sense of alert and security when dealing in situations where there is a weapon, whether it's less than lethal or non-lethal. And because Jeremy has this particular type of Pepperball gun, as he calls it, and you can get it to where it fits in a holster, as I showed you before. You can't tell the difference with this holstered between this and the real Glock. Especially in the holster that Jeremy carries, because Jeremy carries a SLS, a Safariland SLS duty belt holster that is designed to carry the Glock plus a weapon light mounted on the Glock. And he has a weapon light mounted on his Umarex T4E TPM1. Never assume when you're working in law enforcement about that, right? Because you don't know, because it's slight subtle differences between this and a real Glock. That's why you heard Vidler say, don't reach for that firearm. Don't reach for that firearm. Do not reach for that firearm. And if you watch Jeremy's video, when Vidler's telling him to keep his hands up, don't put your hands down, keep your hands up, you notice how Jeremy just half-ass has his hands up? Any other person in the United States, they would not want to get shot because they're carrying a Pepperball gun that looks like a real gun. They would have put them hands up way the hell high in the air. Jeremy's getting a little too cocky. Which, when he went before can't say Jeremy, because when Amir was before the judge trying to get Jeremy released on this charge, the judge says it's a volatile situation. Jeremy's the reason why it's getting so volatile. Watch Jeremy's latest video. Watch his attitude. The officers tell him to sit down because Jeremy actually goes to stand up while handcuffed. And he was told to sit down and stay still. When officers are dealing in traffic stops, all right, they've got to take in their safety, everybody else's safety, the general public safety, as well as Jeremy's safety as a suspect. But first and foremost in the forefront is their safety. And the general public safety. And when Jeremy is continually standing up, I'm surprised when they told him to sit back down. And they've told him to do things more than once, and he gets argumentative and tries to not do it. I'm surprised they have not charged him with failure to comply with a lawful order. Because even though the sheriff's office requested the judge dismiss the charges, and the charges got pulled, and he was released on his own recognizance, you know, this is basically a pressure cooker. It's building up so much pressure, and the release valve isn't going to release it. It's going to end badly if Jeremy continues down this road that he's on. The reason why Jeremy challenges Vidler in his video he just released is because Jeremy is used to being in control. He's used to using that uniform with that duty belt and all the accoutrement, the badge, the police look-alike vehicles. He's used to using that to assert his non-existent authority and power over the general public. And then when he has someone who actually has that authority confronting him, he gets confrontational. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this will be a short, quick one. Hopefully I've gone over things enough to where some of these idiots trying to side with Jeremy on his latest charge will shut up. Alright, we'll catch you next time, guys.